Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following everything happening with the latest gaming hardware. I'm Damon Hadfield, and as always, I'm joined by Ryan McCaffrey, host of IGN's Xbox podcast, Podcast Unlocked.
Howdy, Damon.
Welcome back. And Max Scoville, host of IGN's PlayStation podcast, Podcast Beyond.
Hello, hello.
Hello there. And this week, we're discussing a recent phenomenon where both Xbox and PlayStation seem almost more interested in releasing TV shows based on their hit game properties than making new games based in their hit video game series. So of course, last year, PlayStation had The Last of Us hit on HBO. Didn't have a new game to piggyback off the success of that show. However, Jim Ryan, former PlayStation boss, confirmed that The Last of Us TV show had led to a significant spike in franchise game sales. He said every time an episode of that show dropped, sales of the game increased very dramatically. And speaking of very dramatically increased game sales, the success of the Fallout show has caused interest in older Fallout games to explode. 5 million people were playing old Fallout games yesterday. Fallouts 1 through 4, New Vegas, 76, and Fallout Shelter. 1 million people alone were playing Fallout 76, which is its own whole success story after the very shaky launch of that game. This is all even before the current gen upgrade of Fallout 4 is out as of this taping, and with no new Fallout game expected for years from Bethesda. So this all leads to the big question. You know, we've talked a lot recently about how people seem a little bit disappointed in this console generation as a whole. There aren't a lot of games that seem to really be taking full advantage of either of these consoles. Developers have spent too long with one foot in the last generation. But of course, why make a new game when a TV show will sell your old games for you? Ryan, since Fallout ultimately is an Xbox property now, I want to get your take first. What do you make of all this?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we talked a little bit about this on Podcast Unlocked recently, where in the days of the past, in the days of yore, which thankfully are over, I'm glad we're not in these days anymore, that Bethesda would have either just done a quick and dirty Fallout, just something new to get on the shelf alongside this TV show, or even worse, they would have just contracted a quick and dirty Fallout game out to the lowest bidder, and we would have had one of the million crappy licensed games that used to be the norm with any sort of tie-in. But now, now people are savvy enough that, and there's enough, and everything's digital, and you can just grab it on Steam on sale, and the publisher can put it on sale when the show is out. It's really kind of a better system for everybody, it seems like, and I mean, why not just dig back into either Fallout? If you did play Fallout 4, odds are it's been many years, and I think as of the airing of this, the next gen update's out, just not today when we're taping it. I think it's out tomorrow as we're taping. But and then 76, you alluded to it, Damon. That's a game that is also not new, but had a rough launch, but is by many accounts come a long, long way and really turned around. And now, either if you're going back to it, it's a basically new game, or at least at worst, a much better game. And if you're new to it, you don't even know that it originally launched as a not super great game. You're getting a pretty darn good live service Fallout game. So all of this, it really, I know it's not fair to do this, and I don't mean to knock the Halo TV show, which I liked season 2. But somewhere, somebody at Microsoft's got to be kicking themselves thinking, boy, if we had only knocked the Halo TV show out of the park, we could be seeing this huge resurgence in interest in Halo Infinite right now, which, by the way, just got another update. Halo Infinite's come a long way. There is a lot of great stuff going on in Halo Infinite that's arguably not getting the attention it deserves to. And if... well, not only the Halo TV show would have had to have been, up on the level of The Last of Us and Fallout, it probably would have also had to have been on a bigger streaming network, because Paramount Plus is just statistically not on the level of Prime Video or certainly Netflix or HBO/Max. So, but yeah, I mean, it's been really cool to see this rising tide of Fallout lifting all of the Fallout ships that are still floating around out there.
Well, Max, Sony was first to market with a prestige television show based on its video game property. And then, of course, I believe the second season of Last of Us is filming right now. But there isn't a lot announced, actually, game-wise, coming from Sony. I think all we've got, we know Marvel's Wolverine, Death Stranding 2, Marathon from Bungie, and Fizzant from also from Kojima. Maybe the KOTOR remake can make it out at some point. But the list of like television and movie properties that they have coming is actually longer than that. How do you think we've ended up in sort of a reverse situation like this?
It's very weird. It's also been weird trying to do a weekly PlayStation show when straight up like the amount of non-game properties they have based on their games completely outweighs, and again, they have games in the works, but it's just what's publicly announced, which is also kind of an insight to like how the entertainment industry is a little bit more transparent than games are. But as of right now, like we got the Uncharted movie that did, $407 million at the box office, so we might get a sequel to that at some point. Gran Turismo did well as well. There's also a Days Gone movie. There's a Ghost of Tsushima movie, which John Wick's director Chad Stahelski is working on. There is a Gravity Rush movie, which I believe saw like a very, very brief glimpse of in like a CES sizzle reel. There is an Until Dawn movie in the works, which the guy who did the Shazam movies, David F. Sandberg, is working on. There is Death Stranding, which Kojima has a hand in, but that's being handled by A24 and some of the producers of Barbarian, which I think is going to be a totally bizarre movie. I'm very excited for that. And then there are rumors of a Bloodborne movie. So that's on the movie front. And then on the show's front, there's possibly more Twisted Metal on the way. That show did very well, despite there being... And there's no Twisted Metal game to pull up, which is honestly one of those... sad situations. There was, I believe, talk of a Twisted Metal live service studio getting shut down. There's also, there's The Last of Us. We're getting second season of that. There is a God of War show going to Amazon, I think. Is that right?
I believe so.
Yeah, and then Horizon's going to Netflix. So they're completely scattered all over the place. And then, of course, there's rumors that Sony is considering buying Paramount, which would include Paramount Plus, which would be a little weird if they then owned Halo in some capacity. But yeah, and then it's just kind of crazy to look at all this because, again, like there are games to buy if you go and if you consume some of this media and you go, hey, that was a pretty cool show or that was a pretty cool movie. There's plenty of stuff to jump into right after that, but it's just from a games first perspective, it's a little bit baffling, and it's also kind of funny because, there was the time where, to Ryan's point, where licensed games would just get rushed out the door. There is a timeline where that never stopped, and Insomniac's Wolverine ships this summer in time for Deadpool and Wolverine, and it's a pile of crap. But like, I don't think that's going to be the case. Like somewhere along the line, I think it was maybe around Arkham, somebody got it through their thick skulls that maybe games take longer to make, and maybe it's better to give them more time in the oven. Make them a separate project entirely. A funny thing right now is, are we going to see the MCU live-action Blade movie before we see the Arcane Blade game, or other way around? Again, movies get caught in development hell too. But yeah, it is. I think it's kind of a glimpse into the future of media. Is that games are a valid entertainment medium, and there's a whole generation of people who grew up playing them who understand that. I think there was a point where, games were seen as like this trivial thing, and we got stuff like, I don't know, the Super Mario Brothers movie and the first Mortal Kombat movie, which admittedly is pretty fun. But we are now, 25 years past that, and there's people who understand that there are great stories to be told from games. There are great universes that have never made their way onto the screen, and we're finally getting those, and it's really cool to see. But in terms of it being a creative leap or an interesting thing to do, I would say it's even a notch down from doing a remake of a game, because it's taken sort of a proven quantity and just exposing it to a whole new audience. Like my stepsister, who has never said anything or cared at all about video games, was like, "Hey, did you watch that Last of Us show?" And I was like, "Whoa, this is crazy. This is wild." And I was like, "Did you have any interest in playing it?" And she's like, "No, absolutely not." Which is, not everyone is gonna jump on Steam and download Fallout 4, but a lot of people will, and that's cool to see.
And if you're a game developer or a game publisher that's trying to maintain and even build interest in your properties, with games taking forever, TV shows and movies might not necessarily be cheaper than making a AAA game, but it's definitely faster in most cases. You can turn around, what's the next season of The Last of Us is what'll be, it's written from like start to finish. It's done in a year or so. So it's and probably Fallout as well when that comes back. So it's definitely become quite the strategy, and a smart one, really, unless you just completely screw it up, which nobody lately has completely screwed it up. Even, I'd say like Halo is fine, Twisted Metal's fine. They're not on the Fallout and Last of Us caliber, but unless you just completely ruin it, it's a pretty good way to just lift up everything with your franchise.
Well, streaming is also I feel like a good platform for it, even over movies, because, movies, you got to go out. You got to, get in the car and go to the movie theater, and maybe your enthusiasm after the movie's over kind of fades away. Whereas if it is if you sit down and you binge all of Fallout, or you tune in every week for The Last of Us, and you're sitting on your couch, maybe you're watching it on a PlayStation or an Xbox, the episode's over, you go, okay, what now? And then you tab over and you to the store and you download the game. Like, it's right there. There's no, there's no exchange there. Yeah, I mean, again, games are immensely complicated to make. When a game, when a character falls through geometry in a game, like, gamers get mad about it. It's when a game ships and it's buggy. When that happens in a movie, they
What if there's a Starbucks cup on a Game of Thrones set?
Yeah, that was a mod. Somebody added that. But no, like, if that happens, if somebody, gets caught on the environment and when they're shooting the Fallout show, they call cut, and maybe they call an ambulance, like, it's not the same as like a wheel of cheese vibrating on a Skyrim table or something. Like, it's funny when, games have to function. They have to be a certain amount of like, kind of bulletproof there. They have to be able to stand up to people poking them and prodding them. But like a show is, it's a linear, self-contained experience, which is a lot less work. You don't have to QA test a show,
Well, I do think the cost and time it takes to make AAA games has something to do with this, because the Fallout show had a budget of $153 million. According to the Insomniac leaks last year, Spider-Man 2's budget was $270 million and may have even spiraled tens of millions even beyond that. So it could cost half of what it makes to make a AAA video game to make a prestige television show like Fallout today. There are also reports that The Last of Us first season was around $140 million too. So
other thing is, I mean, they can reuse assets to a certain degree. I feel like that's less, reusing costumes and props and stuff. That's less frowned upon in movie making than it is in games. Like, nobody gets to see recycled assets. Nobody gets mad about that. But we're also at a point where we're seeing overlap. Like, The Mandalorian, they made sets for that in Unreal. Like,
True.
When you have games that already have, nigh photorealistic assets floating around, at what point do we start seeing like, oh yeah, let's just, we need Jackson from The Last of Us. Let's just put it behind them in the green screen. Hopefully they don't do that. I think it's better when it's on location. But if you need a high res model of a Deathclaw, it's pretty easy to get a hold of one.
That's true. Well, as long as the shows end up being as high quality as Last of Us and Fallout, I don't think people are going to be complaining too much. Although I know that people want to have current gen experiences, game experiences that they can play on their current gen consoles. We have the results of last episode's poll, which is a little bit interesting. We were asked, we were talking about rumored upcoming hardware devices, and we asked, which is at the top of your list, your wish list, the viewers. And number one, with half of the vote, was a Steam Deck 2.0, beating out a Switch 2 or a PS5 Pro or an Xbox handheld. That's very surprising to me, because I feel like, has there even been any rumors of sort of a 2.0 version of a Steam Deck?
No, when we were lucky enough to go up and do an IGN first month, right when the Steam Deck was announced, we asked them that very question, like, what's the life cycle on this? And they said, yeah, probably, there will be future versions of it, but probably not for 3-4 years, something like that. So, yeah, I agree. I'm also surprised by that. I voted for Xbox handheld because that would like meaningfully upgrade my overall gaming experience. But yeah, I'm kind of surprised that Switch 2 didn't win. Honestly, that would have been where I would have bet my money.
I mean, the Steam Deck's a hell of a machine. I can imagine that a lot of people didn't necessarily jump on that bandwagon right out the gate because it is sort of an unproven thing. And like Valve has, they kind of dabbled in hardware here and there. There was the weird, era of like Steam boxes. And to see this thing come out, I think a lot of people were skeptical, kind of in the same way that we were about the Switch. And clearly, like, the Steam Deck is great. It's awesome. People who have them love them. And they made the slightly upgraded version, and people love that too. So I could definitely see a lot of people kind of being like, yeah, I'll hold off till the next one because it's been a few years now.
All right, here's a new poll for you to vote on for next episode. Are you going to play the current gen upgrade for Fallout 4? Yes, you'll play it for the first time, or yes, you'll revisit it after several years, or no, you've got other things to play right now. Make sure to vote at IGN.com the day this episode goes live. We'll share the results with you next episode. And that's going to do it for this edition of Next Gen Console Watch. Thank you to both Max and Ryan. Thank you to Jobert and Morian working behind the scenes in our LA studio to make this episode possible. My name is Damon. We'll be back next week with the latest gaming hardware news. We'll see you then.